All right, guys, so here's a story that you will never, ever hear about in mainstream liberal media. And my friend was telling me about this story last night, and I was like, I gotta make a video about this. Okay, because, you know, I used to say this a lot on my channel, but I don't say it as much as I should continue to say it, which is that when it comes to politics, guys, you gotta be careful what you ask for. Because the pendulum always swings the other way. It always swings the other way. For example, when it comes to big tech censorship, okay, the left and people like Hassan Abi, Chink Yoga's nephew, Vosh, okay, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with them, but they're far left, like Twitch streamers, YouTubers, whatever, right? They have advocated for censorship, right? Censoring their opponents, silencing their opponents, right? That don't agree with them. They've advocated for that. And because of their crying and whining and complaining, big tech capitulated, right? And they banned a whole bunch of people on the right for so-called hate speech, right? Now, these guys recently got suspended from Twitch for using what Twitch defines as hate speech when they were talking a whole bunch of anti-white rhetoric using what some people may consider a slur, using the C word, right? Calling people saltines. And they wanted to boo-hoo, whine, and complain about it. Boo-hoo, whine, and complain about it after endorsing and promoting censorship for years, okay? But see, again, this is why I don't do that. Even if I don't necessarily agree with your speech, or I'm not going to advocate for you to be censored, because I understand that in politics, the pendulum always swings the other way. And that is what is happening here with this lawsuit that has been allowed to actually move forward, in which you have a program director at Ohio State University who happens to be a white woman whose name is Mary Faure, suing the school, Ohio State University, and the head of their department, Dr. Monica Cox, who happens to be a black woman, for firing her in retaliation for her going to human resources about how the department head, again, who's a black woman, allegedly made racial comments towards her, right? So I just want you guys to understand, the department head here, a black woman, allegedly made racist comments towards a white woman, okay? And the white woman is filing a lawsuit against the university and department head because they fired her as a form of retaliation for her complaining about the racism that was going on in the workplace. Again, you never will hear about this story in mainstream liberal media. And the judge is actually going to allow this to go forward, right? We're actually going to see how this works in court. Again, you don't see this all that often, right? It always seems to be the other way around. But without further ado, I want you guys to actually watch a news clip about this incident so that you guys get a better understanding of what's going on, and then we're going to get more into it.
A program director at Ohio State University files a lawsuit against the school and her department head, claiming she was fired because of the color of her skin. Thanks for joining us at 11. I'm Mark Taylor.
I'm Colleen Marshall. Mary Faure claims she was wrongfully terminated and that the chair of her Department of Engineering Education made racist and unprofessional comments. She told our Danielle Evitable that she was let go despite excellent performance reviews. Danielle spoke with Faure about the lawsuit she filed in federal court, and she's with us tonight.
Yeah, she tells me that since she's been fired from OSU, she hasn't been able to find another teaching job. And she just wants justice, since she claims she has never had any complaints against her.
This is the lawsuit Mary Faure filed against the Ohio State University and Monica Cox, the chair in the Department of Engineering Education.
I think the public should know what's going on in the College of Engineering.
At the time, Faure was the director of the Engineering Technical Communications program. Faure claims she was terminated for racial reasons from her job she had for 14 years by her supervisor, who is black.
I felt like I had to be the brave one who stood up and said, hey, this is not okay. And I started with the EEOC complaint and got the right to sue letter.
Faure claims Cox would make racist statements, one stating in the lawsuit reads, quote, "I despise white people." She says she went to HR on 6 different occasions, but nothing was documented.
I couldn't understand why I wasn't getting the follow-up that he promised me.
Then in 2017, a little more than a year after Cox was hired, Faure claims she was fired without notice, and Cox cited poor performance.
I'm terrified, actually, that that could happen to me with no paper trail and no genuine documented warning.
The lawsuit alleges that she never had a poor performance evaluation And in this performance review from 2016 Faure gave us, it shows Cox put down either exceeds expectations or outstanding.
I was consistently above average as a teacher in the eyes of the students and in the eyes of my supervisors, and I had many over the years.
I reached out to OSU and was told, quote, "We are aware of the lawsuit and are reviewing it." When I emailed Cox for her side, she said, quote, "I have no comment. Thanks." Besides seeking money from this lawsuit, Faure says she wants people held responsible.
Justice and hopefully a positive change in that administration.
And I reached out to OSU for a second time today to see if they had anything to add to their comment, but haven't heard back. Local for you, Danielle Vidable, NBC4.
All right, Danielle, thank you.
All right, guys. So in all transparency, that news clip that you guys saw was from 2 years ago when the lawsuit was initially filed. Now, this case right here is super important because the judge is actually allowing it to go forward, right? They're actually allowing it to go forward. I'm going to read the reasons why. But I just want to say, this right here, again, is fascinating. And I want to continue to follow this because this goes directly against the argument that people on the left make. People like Hassan Abi and Vosh and all those people, they try to make in regards to how, well, you know, non-whites can't be racist because whites hold all the power, right? And if you're not empowered, then therefore you can't be racist. When, again, we know that really does not apply on an individual level. I don't even think it really applies on a systemic level. But on an individual level, it doesn't apply. Look at this situation right here. The woman that is allegedly responsible for this woman getting fired, this white woman getting fired, is black. Okay? She's black. And she's in a position of power. And allegedly she used racial comments that we're going to get into towards this white woman and then use her power, right, to get her fired for retaliating against her. That should be textbook racism, okay? If you want to define it as a power structure. Again, it disproves the idea that black people have no power. Just because you're black, then that means you inherently have no power. So again, I find this to be some interesting stuff that, you know, I really want to talk about. It says right here, from a decision Tuesday in Faure versus Ohio State University by Judge Edmund Sargis. Mary Faure worked for OSU for 30 years and ultimately became Director of Engineering Technical Communications for the Engineering Education Department at the OSU College of Engineering. Quote, in this role, she led a team of lecturers and worked with the EED Career Services Department to help students apply for jobs. David Williams, Dean of the OSU College of Engineering, selected Dr. Monica Cox as the chairman of the EED soon after the EED's formation. On January 25th, 2016, Dr. Cox and Ms. Faure met to discuss Ms. Faure's technical communications program and the team of lecturers Ms. Faure supervised during the meeting. Ms. Faure alleges that Dr. Cox said, quote, "I despise white people" multiple times and discussed, quote, barriers and disadvantages that white people had put up against her in her previous life. Again, victimhood train, right? Saying that she disguises whites because she's a so-called victim, okay? Again, this victimhood mentality is poison, okay? It just creates more division. It causes stuff like this to happen. And guys, this goes without saying, but it has to be stated just so people can understand. Can you imagine a black employee accusing her supervisor or whatever, right? A white woman, okay, a white person, of saying that they despise blacks, right? Do you think that in 2021 that the black employee would have been fired if they went to HR and complained about that? Do you think they would have been fired? I don't think they would have been fired. I think that the white person would have been fired on the spot, right? They would have been fired on the spot if any black person even accused them of saying something like that. I mean, for various reasons. And the main reason is because the woke mob and the mainstream liberal media would have picked up the story and put pressure on the school to do it. Okay? That's what would have happened. But again, when it comes to a situation like this, you don't hear anything about it. According to Ms. Faure, Dr. Cox pointed her finger at Ms. Faure and said, "I have been at a disadvantage my whole career because of you people." Dr. Cox recounted an experience where a colleague at Purdue University made an insulting remark, but the chair of her department, quote, "did not deal with these old white men for their insult." Okay, so just because you allegedly had an experience like that, it doesn't make it okay for you to do to other people what other people have done to you, right? Two wrongs don't make a right, okay? I want these woke revolutionaries to realize this stuff while they're out here saying all this anti-white racist stuff, thinking that it's going to make it better. And it's not. It's only going to make it worse. Miss Faure avers that she told Dr. Cox the comments were racist and unprofessional. They were. And that the discussion was not related to the Miss Faure's program. Miss Faure further alleges that Dr. Cox said, Mary. And then she went like this at me, pointed her finger, and I pushed back in my chair and said, if you repeat that, I'll deny. I thought she was going to strike me. Dr. Cox admitted that she discussed her background at Purdue with Miss Faure during this meeting, but denies making statements referring to you people or old white men. Mrs. Faure and other EED employees allege that throughout 2016-2017, Dr. Cox made racist statements about white people, such as there were so many old white men in the EED, white men in the EED held too much power, white people are too sensitive, referring to white individuals in the EED as big lips, and Colonel Sanders calling a white male professor a bully and said he talks too much in meetings. An administrative assistant who worked for Dr. Cox for 16 months stated that Dr. Cox made race-based comments at least once a month and would warn her, quote, if you say I said this, I'll deny it. Wow. She sounds salty. Okay, she sounds hurt. Okay, and that's why she's saying a lot of this stuff. That's why she's saying it, because she personally feels hurt and she thinks it's okay to just, be racist back towards other people. Okay, because she allegedly has had some racism thrown towards her. Yeah, two wrongs don't make a right, man. Faure claims that she complained to HR and EED leadership about Dr. Cox several times between February and December 2016 and was then fired. She sued, claiming the real reason for the fire was race discrimination, retaliation for her discrimination complaints in violation of Title VII, and retaliation in violation of the First Amendment, and the court allowed the claims to go to a jury. Quote, reading the conflicting accounts in a light most favorable to plaintiff and drawing all inferences in her favor, which is the standard for a motion for summary judgment, a reasonable jury could find that Dr. Cox was the primary decision maker in Ms. Faure's termination, so that, quote, a racial minority took an adverse action against a non-minority plaintiff, or was the cause of the discriminatory information flow relied upon by the primary decision maker, she thus satisfying the prima facie first element's background circumstances requirement. And while Dr. Cox's statements about race quoted above may not suffice as direct evidence of discrimination, they are sufficient for a jury to infer discrimination. The plaintiff, therefore, has shown a prima facie case of reverse race discrimination. I don't know about that word reverse. It's just racial discrimination. That's what it is. The court likewise concluded that there was enough evidence to go to the jury on whether OSU stated legitimate non-retaliatory reason for terminating plaintiff's employment, namely her failure to adapt to the new departmental transition and inability to communicate professionally with her superiors and coordinates was a pretext. OSU argued that Ms. Faure spread misinformation multiple times, which caused lecturers to fear that they would lose their jobs, and complained to EED staff about issues that should have been addressed to Dr. Cox. Ultimately, HR concluded that the plaintiff's actions and behaviors have created an environment of low morale, uncertainty, fear of job security, concerns for the future of the ETC, uncertainty of goals and priorities, and distractions to departmental leadership and employees. So basically what OSU is claiming is that this woman essentially was a disruption in the department, right? That they didn't fire her for retaliatory reasons or anything like that. It was simply because she was communicating unprofessionally about issues that she had with Dr. Cox, which was causing a disruptive environment, okay, and leading to some problems in the department. That's what OSU is saying in defense. But the court concluded that, quote, plaintiff has established a genuine issue of material fact as to whether she was fired because of her race, largely because there is a significant evidence that OSU considerably deviated from its protocol and there was harm to Ms. Faure. Ms. Faure was not placed on a performance improvement plan or formally warned that she could be terminated, even though there is evidence that OSU employees have a clear expectation that they will receive a warning before termination. Her contention is supported by another OSU staff member's testimony that he had been a part of the termination process for at least a couple dozen employees, and every one of them was warned that failure to correct behavior might result in termination. So basically what is being said here is that OSU, typically when they fire people, they give you a warning, right? Like, you know ahead of time, like, okay, I'm messing up. I might get fired, okay, if I keep messing up. This lady was just fired on the spot, okay, without warning, anything like that, which again is not the same protocol they usually go through, okay? And the court has basically said that this is a genuine issue of material fact as to whether or not she was fired because of her race, okay? Because the fact that OSU deviated from what they normally do when they fire people. So we're just going to read a little bit more here, just this last little paragraph, and then we're going to be done. The court also concluded that, for similar reasons, Faure had provided enough evidence to go to the jury on the question whether OSU had retaliated against her because she opposed a practice that violated Title VII. Such retaliation is itself forbidden by Title VII, and the court likewise allowed Ms. Faure's claim of retaliation for First Amendment protected speech to go forward. All right, so we're not reading all this stuff, but I'm gonna link the article here if you guys want to read the rest of this stuff. But really, again, I find this to be fascinating, and I'm going to keep up with this because I want to see what happens. I want to see what happens because usually you don't see this. Usually it's the reverse. You have a black employee complaining about racism in the workplace, that some white person said something to them that was racist, and they complained about the HR and they got fired in retaliation for complaining about it, right? That there was some type of discrimination. However, you never see it in the form that it is in regards to this story. That's why I find this to be so interesting. Okay, and if a court and the jury actually does side with the plaintiff in this case, that completely destroys the left's argument in regards to how only non-white people can be racist, right? Because of so-called power dynamics. It completely destroys that argument, okay? And it's one of those things where this is what happens, again, when you play the race card so many times, where people are always complaining about white people being racist towards them in the workplace. All right, cool. That's fine. But again, the pendulum swings both ways. You can't turn back around as a non-white person and then be racist towards whites, say and make racial comments towards whites and think that you can't get sued, right? Or that you shouldn't be punished, because it's literally the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. So again, I find this stuff to be interesting. And I want to share this with you guys because, again, you never see anything like this. The mainstream media would never talk about this. Again, if this was a black person doing this, again, you would see it everywhere. I could barely find any information on this story. And for obvious reasons, right? For obvious reasons why, okay? Because it doesn't fit the narrative. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a black conservative perspective. Peace.